The atmosphere inside the marble-floored auditorium of the Interfaith Institute of Human Civilization pulsed with quiet intensity. Cameras rolled silently, students murmured with anticipation, and a soft radiance from overhead lights danced across polished oak desks arranged in a semicircle around the stage. This was no ordinary evening. A special session had been announced: Messiah or Deceiver, the End-Time Controversy. At the center of the stage sat two individuals, a young Muslim woman in her early 20s and a 60-year-old Jewish philosopher with a commanding presence. She wore a light gray hijab and carried herself with serene confidence, her eyes alert, her fingers resting calmly on a notepad. He reclined slightly in a leather chair, a cane propped beside him, long silver curls cascading behind his ears. The nameplate before him read, Professor Yehuda Stein, Jewish scholar. The moderator adjusted his microphone. Tonight's discussion will focus on the concept of the Messiah and the controversial figure some traditions associate with the end times, the Dajjal, or, as others might call him, the Antichrist. Yehuda's lips curved into a faint smirk. "Let us begin," he said smoothly. "Ladies and gentlemen, in Jewish tradition we await a Messiah, not a spirit, not a ghost, but a man, a strong leader, one who will restore our dignity, establish global justice, and most importantly, free us from disgrace." Amna nodded respectfully. "And we, too, await a Messiah," she said, "but not a new one. We await the return of Jesus, Isa ibn Maryam, peace be upon him, not to bring a new law, but to destroy the greatest trial humanity will ever face, the Dajjal." The name rippled across the hall like a cold wind. Dajjal. Students leaned forward. Yehuda narrowed his eyes. "Dajjal," he repeated, voice tinged with sarcasm. "You mean that one-eyed monster with power over weather and death? Come now." "No fiction," Amna replied calmly. "Our prophet, peace be upon him, warned us of him with trembling lips and a face flushed red with fear. Dajjal is real, not a beast, not a fable, but a man, a human who will present himself as the Messiah, yet be the greatest liar and deceiver the earth has ever known." Yehuda chuckled, tapping his cane. "And you believe that, in a world of satellites and science?" She leaned in slightly. "Yes. In fact, it is this world of satellites, surveillance, virtual reality, and artificial intelligence that is preparing his arrival. Where you see advancement, I see deception. Dajjal's strength won't lie in brute force, it will lie in seduction, in a digital fitna that spans the globe." A student raised his hand, but the moderator gestured for the debate to continue. Yehuda shifted. "So, you Muslims claim this Dajjal will impersonate your Messiah?" "No," Amna corrected. "He will claim to be the Messiah for the world, but Muslims will see through him. He will claim divine powers, curing the blind, raising the dead, through illusions or technology, and he will declare himself to be God." "And you believe," Yehuda asked incredulous, "that the world will just fall at his feet?" "They already are," she said quietly. "Just not to him yet." Yehuda raised an eyebrow. "Explain." "Today," she said, "people worship beauty, wealth, influence. They follow what they see on screens more than what their hearts tell them. They trust the artificial more than the real. Dajjal will only be the climax of a system already in place, and yes, many will fall before him because they never stood upon truth to begin with." A sudden hush fell over the room. Yehuda broke it with a slow clap. "Well said," he admitted, "but let me be clear. I don't see Dajjal as your enemy. I see him as a liberator, a force the world needs. Perhaps he will challenge the weak, perhaps seduce the pious. But that is power. And power, my friends, writes history." Amna's smile was faint but firm. "And power without truth always collapses." Yehuda leaned forward, eyes locked with hers. "Tell me, young woman, If your prophet feared him so much, why didn't he confront him himself? He did, she replied without hesitation. Not with a sword, not with politics, but with knowledge. He told us how to recognize him, his signs, his speech, his eye, his arrogance, his deceptions, and most importantly, how to protect ourselves. He gave us a survival map. Yehuda scoffed. You mean your famous Surah Al-Kahf? Yes, she said firmly. The chapter of the cave. Every Friday, millions of us read it. Not as ritual, as armor. Armor against not myth, but against a living, breathing force of chaos. Yehuda's smirk faded. And you believe people like me will follow him? She didn't blink. I believe people like you are already praying for him. Gasps broke from the audience. The moderator leaned forward in alarm. Let's remain civil. Yehuda raised a hand. Let her speak. Amna's voice was calm, but carried the sharpness of tempered steel. You wait for a man who will defy divine law. You saw. Yehuda sat back, still, expression unreadable. The cameras zoomed in, capturing the tension. Amna remained composed, her fingers laced, her breath steady. No fear crossed her face, only the deep calm of someone who believed what she spoke. Yehuda broke the silence. Let's suppose, for a moment, that this Dajjal is real, this deceiver. You say he will come pretending to be the Messiah, but what makes you so sure he isn't the one we've been waiting for? The room held its breath. The question landed like a stone dropped into still water. Amna tilted her head slightly. Because the real Messiah doesn't demand submission to himself. He restores truth. He doesn't manipulate. He enlightens. The real Messiah doesn't deceive with miracles. He brings peace, not chaos. Yehuda's voice sharpened. Our Messiah will not be soft. He will destroy our enemies, rebuild the temple, establish our dominion, not with prayers, but with power. And that, Amna replied without flinching, is why you'll mistake Dajjal for him, because your expectations are political, not spiritual. You don't want a guide, you want a conqueror, and that's exactly what Dajjal will give you. An empire dressed in prophecy, a kingdom without God. Yehuda's eyes narrowed. You accuse us of blindness? I accuse your ego of obscuring your vision, she replied. Even your scriptures speak of trials and deception in the last days. When the deceiver comes, he won't be cloaked in darkness. He'll come clothed in light, with promises, with wonders, and he'll convince those who measure truth by results, not by righteousness. There was a pause. Yehuda tapped his fingers against the table. Let me ask you this, he said. What if this man, this so-called Dajjal, ends wars, ends poverty, unites nations? Will you still call him the devil? If a man ends war by enslaving minds, Amna said, he is not a peacemaker. He is a tyrant with a pleasant mask. Yehuda smirked. You have a poetic tongue. But reality is not so black and white. Sometimes power, even deception, is necessary if it leads to a greater good. And that, she said sharply, is exactly how Dajjal will justify himself. And people like you will cheer him on. Yehuda leaned back, nodding slowly. So, you believe your prophet warned you of him centuries ago? He didn't just warn us, she said. He described him, his eye, his gait, his speech. He told us Dajjal would travel the earth swiftly, like clouds driven by wind, that he would carry a false paradise and a false hell, that he would perform miracles, that he would claim divinity. Yehuda raised an eyebrow. And you don't think that sounds like religious fantasy? I think it sounds like tomorrow's headlines, she replied coldly. Yehuda fell quiet for a moment, then straightened. You mentioned Jesus. You believe he will return? Yes. To kill this Dajjal? Yes. And yet we rejected him once, Yehuda said. You think we'll recognize him when he returns? No, Amna said softly, because you didn't recognize him the first time. You expected a warrior. God sent you a healer. You wanted a king. He gave you a servant. When he returns, he won't come seeking your approval. He'll come to defend the truth." Yehuda's fingers twitched, but he said nothing. Amna continued, "And when he does, he will descend near the white minaret of Damascus, wearing yellow garments, hands resting on the shoulders of 2 angels. And the earth will tremble. The lie of Dajjal will shatter, and the Messiah will restore what was broken, not through violence, but through divine command." Yehuda's voice dropped to a measured tone. "Tell me, Amna, if Dajjal is as powerful as you say, raising the dead, commanding the rain, manipulating time and space, don't you fear people will believe in him out of desperation? What if the world is starving, suffering, drowning in chaos, and he feeds them? That," she answered, "is what makes him most dangerous, because his gifts will come at the price of your soul. He will offer comfort in exchange for obedience, safety in exchange for surrender. But once you sell your truth, you belong to him." Yehuda's tone turned mocking. "And you, do you believe you can resist him? A young woman, no army, no weapons, no power?" She raised her eyes. "I have something he can never conquer, a heart that knows its Lord." A heavy silence fell again. Yehuda's expression darkened. "He will not come to negotiate. He will demand, command. You will be at his mercy." "Only if I stand alone," she said. "But I won't. I have the warnings of my prophet, the words of my book, the prayers of the righteous before me, and the protection of a Lord who sees everything." Yehuda exhaled through his nose. "You speak as if you've already seen the battlefield." "I live on it," she replied. The moderator leaned into the mic. "We'll take a brief break before the next segment." As the lights dimmed slightly, Amna closed her eyes and whispered verses from Surah Al-Kahf, not from fear, but for preparation. "Ye." Her expression had changed. Less academic now, more personal. The air between them had thickened, like a taut string about to snap. "You speak of deception," Yehuda began, his voice low as he cleared his throat, as if trying to dislodge illusions. "Let me ask you, what if the very deception you fear has already infiltrated your own community?" Amna didn't flinch. "Deception recognizes no boundaries," she said. "Muslim or non-Muslim, any heart left unguarded becomes vulnerable." Yehuda smirked. "Convenient." "No," she replied, "truthful. Islam teaches us never to assume we are immune. Even the Prophet's companions feared being deceived by Dajjal. We are warned not to be arrogant." He leaned in closer. "Tell me, do you think this Dajjal you speak of will arrive with horns and fire? Or will he look like one of us?" "He'll look like a savior," Amna said. "He'll be charismatic, magnetic, maybe even beautiful. People won't fear him. They'll welcome him, because what he brings will appear to be mercy, but it will feel like slavery." He tapped his cane rhythmically against the floor. "You say he'll control the skies, the earth, the dead, the rain, even food. How do you explain that in this age of science?" "Not magic," Amna answered. "Technology." He raised an eyebrow. "You think this Antichrist will use tech?" "I think," she said, "that the world is already building his kingdom. Smart cities, AI assistants, surveillance drones, digital currencies, social credit systems, facial recognition. It's no longer science fiction. He won't need to perform new miracles. He'll only need to weaponize what we've already created." There were murmurs in the audience, a mix of awe, skepticism, and wonder. Yehuda chuckled softly. "So you're saying Dajjal will be some kind of techno-prophet?" "I'm saying," Amna replied, "he will inherit a world that already chose convenience over truth. People won't question his power because they've already stopped questioning anything. He will offer solutions, and the world will line up to surrender its freedom." Yehuda's gaze sharpened. "Even yours?" She met his eyes. "No," she said, softly but firmly. Not mine. He leaned back, gaze drifting into the distance. You Muslims always paint yourselves as the final resistance. We don't need to be the last line, she said, just the one that doesn't bend. A pause stretched between them. Yehuda exhaled, fingers steepled. You speak of him as if he's coming tomorrow. He might, Amna replied, or the day after. The world is ripe. People crave control disguised as peace, pleasure dressed as purpose, unity divorced from morality, and he'll offer all of it. Yehuda's nod came slow, theatrical. Let me ask something darker. What if this man, this Messiah of yours, comes to liberate your people, but to punish mine? We're not seeking vengeance, Amna said. We seek truth, and whoever resists it, Muslim, Jew, or atheist, will have to answer for that resistance. A smile touched his lips. And what if those nearby could hear it? She was reciting a remembrance, ancient words, older than the earth. The moderator hesitated, then extended a hand. You may resume. Yehuda's voice was lower now, stripped of its earlier thunder. What you said, before the break, about the mirror, that was clever. It wasn't clever, Amna replied. It was simple. Every soul knows when it's feeding its demons. He inhaled deeply. You claim Dajjal can't touch you, that you're ready. But how do you know? She opened her eyes. Because I live as though he's already here. The words hit harder than any raised voice. Yehuda blinked. We were warned, she continued, that he would bring confusion. But confusion is already here. People no longer know who they are. Man, woman, purpose, morality. It's all blurred. Truth is mocked. Sin is celebrated. And those who speak clearly are branded dangerous. So I don't wait for Dajjal to arrive with one eye and a claim of godhood. I prepare for his spirit, which already whispers through systems, devices, distractions. Yehuda narrowed his eyes. You think all of this, he gestured vaguely, is part of it? Yes, Amna said. The whole system is being trained. To obey, not to think. To conform. When the real Dajjal arrives, the world will already be his. And Islam, he said, is the resistance. Not Islam by name, she replied. Islam in action. There are Muslims who will follow him too, because their Islam is only on their tongues, not in their hearts. A long pause followed. You mentioned earlier Surah Al-Kahf? Yehuda asked. Why do you hold to that chapter so tightly? She looked at the audience, then at him. Because the prophet told us. Reciting its first 10 verses protects from Dajjal's trial. And when we studied it, we found its stories were not just words, but shields. She held up her hand, listing each. The trial of faith, the people of the cave, the trial of wealth, the man with 2 gardens, the trial of knowledge, Moses and Khidr, the trial of power, Dhul Qarnayn, and Dajjal. Will test humanity in all 4. Yehuda blinked. Faith, wealth, knowledge, power, she nodded. Those who fail will follow him. Those who endure will see him for what he is. And what is that? He asked, his tone sharp again. In your eyes? An experiment, she said. Sent by God to sift the sincere from the self-deceived. A divine test? He asked. A necessary one, she replied. Every generation is tested, but Dajjal's trial will be total, global, inescapable. It will tempt the poor and the powerful. That's why we were told, not to fight him, but to flee. Yehuda's brow rose. Why flee? Because he will twist what you see. Your own eyes will deceive you. He will show heaven, but it will be hell. He will show fire, but it will be paradise. And if your heart isn't anchored before he comes, your mind will drown. The students in the front exchanged glances. Some scribbled notes. Others sat in stunned stillness. And you think your people will withstand him? Yehuda asked. I think those who prepared will, she said. The rest, only God knows. He studied her in silence. And if I told you, I want him to come anyway? I'd say, she answered, may God protect you from your own wishes. His tone turned darker. You sound confident, but I sense fear. You are afraid of him. I am, she said, and that fear keeps me alert. Even the prophet feared for us, so who am I to feel safe? Yehuda frowned. Then, aren't you already defeated? No, she said. Fear of a lion doesn't make you weak. It makes you awake. He glanced at the moderator, then back at her. What if I told you I've already seen his influence, not as a man, but as a force? In boardrooms, in governments, even among the rabbis? Amna said nothing. I'm not saying I believe in your Antichrist, he went on. But I've seen men speak like gods. I've seen them command destruction with a gesture. I've seen wealth and cruelty worshipped in suits. If that's what you mean by Dajjal, then maybe he's already in power. A ripple passed through the audience, and Amna replied quietly, Then ask yourself, if that's not the real Dajjal, what will you do when the real one finally arrives? Yehuda didn't answer. The moderator stood. We will resume shortly for the final session. Yehuda remained seated, hands still. Amna stepped down from the platform, calm, deliberate. A camera zoomed in on Yehuda's face, and for the first time in the entire event, the man who once spoke of domination and power looked genuinely disturbed. She raised her voice only once during the entire event, yet somehow her words echoed louder and longer than anything else. They clung to the corners of the room like smoke after fire. Yehuda tapped the microphone once, drawing the audience back in. I used to believe, he began slowly, that religion was a mechanism, a tool for surviving exile, oppression, fear, that we needed a Messiah not because heaven demanded one, but because earth did. Amna listened silently. And if he brings rain after drought, causes crops to grow where there was once desert, gives sight to the blind, we will still reject him. He narrowed his eyes. Even if he offers you paradise. She smiled softly. Because we will know that it's hell in disguise. The room went still. A student near the front gasped. From the back, someone exhaled sharply. Yehuda pressed on. Easy to say now, but when the world is burning and he offers shade, will you truly turn it down? Yes, she said, because I'd rather burn in faith than live in falsehood. Her words struck like lightning, jarring and unmissable. Yehuda folded his hands and whispered, Why? Why would you reject comfort? She replied, Because truth was never meant to make us comfortable. It was meant to make us clear, and if comfort demands I lie to my soul, then comfort is just another prison. He stared at her, as if seeing her for the first time. Your prophet taught you this much? He asked. He taught us everything we need to survive, she said. Dajjal, she continued, he warned us. The prophet said, A man will wake as a believer and sleep as a disbeliever. That's how fast deception will spread. It won't knock, it'll flood, and if you're not anchored, you'll drown. Yehuda stroked his beard thoughtfully. And what of those who follow him? The billions, perhaps. Are they doomed? Her voice softened. They will follow him because they've never truly followed anything before. They worshipped brands, not values. Fame, not character. Their gods were men. Their morals, fluid. Dajjal won't force them. They'll invite him. The silence that followed was heavier than words. Yehuda cleared his throat, though it sounded dry. Our books say the Messiah will be wise, powerful, command nations, and perform miracles. That, she said gently, is exactly why you will follow the Dajjal. He gave a bitter smile. Because we expect strength. Because you've mistaken strength for truth, she replied. The real Messiah doesn't need to show power. He simply brings light. The Dajjal will show you lightning, but it will blind, not guide. The moderator stayed seated, notes untouched. He realized this was no longer his space to control. Yehuda looked down at the table. "Tell me, Amna, in your heart, are you afraid of him?" She paused. "Yes," she admitted, "but not in the way you think. I'm not afraid of what he'll do to me. I'm afraid of who I might become if I'm unprepared. That's the true fear, that I could see fire and call it water, hear falsehood and mistake it for truth, that I could look him in the eye and forget everything I believe." She swallowed. "But that fear," she added, "keeps me awake. It keeps me humble. It keeps me connected to my Lord." Yehuda watched her for a long time before asking, "And what happens to him in the end?" "The Dajjal? He will be slain by the true Messiah," she said quietly. "Jesus, son of Mary, peace be upon him, he will descend at a white minaret in Damascus. No fanfare, no politics. He won't argue. His presence alone will silence the world. And when Dajjal sees him," she continued, "he will melt like salt in water. His illusion will dissolve in the light of truth." Yehuda's jaw tensed. "And then?" "Then truth will rise again," she said, "not with swords or dominion, but in peace. And those who stood firm in the storm will inherit the calm." Yehuda sat still, hands folded. The proud fire in his eyes had dimmed. What remained was something deeper. He stared into the distance, toward something beyond politics or pride. Amna stood. She glanced once over the audience, then back to him. "When the real Messiah comes," she said, "he won't need to be believed. He won't ask. His truth will not seek permission. It will simply be." She stepped back. Yehuda's fingers gripped his cane tightly, but he said nothing. The crowd held its breath. The debate had transformed into something else, something intimate, sacred, a confrontation not between ideologies, but between light and shadow, truth and ego, sincerity and spectacle. Amna returned to her seat with the calm of someone who had already said all that needed to be said. Yehuda, across from her, sat silent, tapping his finger rhythmically against the table. He had grown quieter with each session. But his silence wasn't surrender. It was resistance, a struggle. His gaze lingered on her, searching, not challenging. Then he spoke. "Tell me something, Amna," he said slowly. "Do you believe I'll follow him? The Dajjal?" She didn't flinch. "Yes." He nodded slowly, then leaned forward. His voice dropped, cold and sharp. "What if I told you not only will I follow him, I will celebrate him. I will take his hand, offer him my loyalty, my knowledge, my people, because I believe he will complete what our ancestors began." Amna stayed silent. "You fear him as a monster," he said, "but I see a king, a liberator. And when he builds his world, Amna, it won't just be nations that kneel." Then he leaned closer, his VR. "Like Esau did," she replied, "for a bowl of soup. People will sell eternity for comfort, but not all of us." "So, you'd rather die?" he said, sharp now. "I'd rather die with dignity than live as a slave." Silence stretched again. "You think he'll fear you?" he asked, mocking. "No," she said, "but I believe he'll hate me, because tyrants fear only one thing, a soul they can't break." The audience, once silent, now radiated with emotion, many eyes glistening. Yehuda's arrogance had crossed the line. Amna's response wasn't rage, it was unwavering conviction. "You speak," he muttered, "as if he can't touch you." "He can try," she said. "He can destroy my body, starve me, threaten me, but he cannot rewrite what I believe. My soul is protected, not by weapons, but by prayer, by my prophet's words, by the one who made me." Yehuda slammed his palm on the table. "That won't save you." "No," she said, "but it will save what matters." His hands trembled. The crowd noticed. Amna stood. I will not beg for Dajjal's approval. I will not fear his fire. I will not believe his lies. I will not bow to the counterfeit. She looked Yehuda in the eye. My head bows only once, and never to a deceiver. She walked off stage. Yehuda remained, staring at the floor. Around him, silence. Above him, a question he could no longer mock. What if she's right?